If I could get a message out there, it's talk to other people, man. You don't got to do it by yourself. There's so many people that are doing it. Just the amount of people that are willing to help and what you learn, it's unbelievable.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I have Mr. Kyle Walbridge on the show, a 28-year-old investor from California who bootstrapped his portfolio through house hacking and DIY rehabs while working 16-hour days and saving his money wisely.
Finding that market could be a little scary. I could understand if you're trying to jump in for the first time. Like when you're looking at these other areas, it's very foreign. But for me, when I look at those, I'm like, there's people out there killing it. This is what they do. They own 5, 10, 20, 30 units. They buy single family homes. Hardest part is trying to find a team you trust. And I think that's a big part of jumping in communities if you want to do out-of-state real estate investing, is having someone there that you can trust.
Kyle is also a member of the Remote Real Estate Academy, where I've been coaching him directly on how to pick a market, build a team, and tackle long-distance investing. We talk about his evolution from starting as an accidental house hacker to becoming the more intentional, strategic real estate investor that he is today.
I have this little piece of paper actually that I keep to this day that says my net worth was negative $18,000. It's still able to get in a house. And then once I figured out how powerful that was, I knew I had to replicate this since I'd saved so much money on that first one.
We cover everything from the tactical process he used to build his portfolio, his discovery of the power of communities, and his approach to personal development and mindset. He shares tons of wisdom that just about anyone can relate to, especially. Without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of career, family, and finances. Learn the mindsets, tips, and strategies to help you on your personal journey to build a life of abundance and purpose for you and your family. Now here's your host, Aaron Amin. Today I'm joined by my friend and fellow investor, Mr. Kyle Walbridge. Kyle is also a member of the Remote Real Estate Academy, which is my coaching community that helps people invest in rental properties anywhere in the country from anywhere in the world. Kyle, I've enjoyed following your story, but rather than me kind of butcher what your background is, I would love for you to just tell my audience about it in your own words.
Yeah, absolutely, Aaron. Happy to be here, man. I appreciate you giving the time and everything. So I guess we'll just start from square one. So back to my first property. I'm 28 now. When I was 23, I was able to buy my first house hack. So I got in, did a little down payment assistance program, really didn't understand much about real estate in general, investing at the time. So I got kicked out of my apartment, moved back home for a little bit. And I was like, man, I got to get out of here. So I ended up buying a property about 40 minutes away from my hometown, really stretched it out, commuting a long ways, but it was able to get in. But prior to that, I was able to get some roommates, talk to some friends beforehand, and house hack the house I was buying before I even really knew it was a thing. And then once I started living there, did a refi, started living for free, man. The whole real estate thing really starts piquing your interest and you really start to learn. And that's when I was all in from there. That first property, a lot of props to that, man. Getting in with the down payment assistance, really. I have this little piece of paper actually that I keep to this day that says my net worth was negative $18,000. It's still able to get in a house. And then once I figured out how powerful that was, man, I knew I had to replicate this and figure out. And since I'd saved so much money on that first one with the down payment assistance, I was able to roll that into a investment property in Boise, Idaho. I jumped right into long distance real estate, right? So still learning a lot, but I knew I needed a cheaper market living here in the Bay Area, California. I was able to utilize some of this money and I started looking at markets. So I ended up finding Boise at the time, which at the time, medium house income or property was like 260, give or take. So it made sense. The numbers were making sense. I had visited. I had a lot of friends that lived there. And so 6-8 months later, I ended up pulling the trigger, man, finding a house at 260, renting it out room by room to some people I knew out there. Just managing it on my own at that point, right? Just trying to fill rooms. Had some good, had some bad, trying to fill that master, that extra bedroom. Some people leaving in the middle of the night, not paying, but just learning as it goes. And rolling into that, man, I just been on a roll since. It's working out, go to bed in real estate. So now we're sitting at 4 properties. 5 years later, I got 3 out in my local neighborhood and then the one long out in Boise, Idaho. So it's been a journey. It's everlasting. I'm learning. I'm 28. Like I said, it's 5-6 years down the line and I'm just getting started, just learning from other people, man. The amount of people that I've been able to connect with, like yourself, different groups because I was always a more do it by yourself. This has all been solo. I didn't go to college. I just worked blue collar jobs like landscaping type work out of high school. So it was really just podcasts, YouTube, let's everything to myself, learning on my own. But these last 6 months, man, have been unbelievably powerful. It's if I could get a message out there, man, it's talk to other people, man. You don't got to do it by yourself. There's so many people that are doing it. And what's opened up to me in the last 6 to 8 months, just from being a quiet guy, is just actually just messaging people, talking to people. I'm here on a podcast. I would have never been on a podcast. Not really my thing. And man, just the amount of people that are willing to help and what you learn, it's unbelievable, man.
I love it.
So I guess that's the
That is
base
the
of the
base,
story.
although we're missing a little bit of context here. So you're from California, right? Central California, correct?
Yeah, I'm about 50 minutes east of San Francisco. So it's Oakley, Brentwood, Discovery Bay. Originally from Livermore, moved out to Oakley where it was more affordable and been going
So
from there.
I color that context in because that's a really difficult, very expensive place to start investing in real estate. So even the idea of doing a house hack is a pretty high entry point compared to some of the other places that you're talking about. And then that also puts in context when you found the $260,000 house in Boise, that probably felt much cheaper compared to what was available around you. And I think that relativity is a pretty important factor, especially for people in these expensive coastal areas where they're used to a single family 4-bedroom house being $850,000. And so you see, especially even Boise now is considered expensive by most standards. And so you start to get further and further inland towards the center of the US, and your mind starts to explode if you're coming from California or one of the coastal cities.
And that's how it's really getting for me at this point. And this talking to other people, my second property was the out of state, but I veered away from that and started doing house hacks. So my first property, I did move out about a year and a half ago, and I basically rolled it into another more expensive house hack. And then another one 15 minutes down the road, I did more of a traditional rental, but that was like almost like a pocket listing. I built a great relationship / mentor with my property manager. He's an old school guy. It's more emotional, like person to person feel. And he's been amazing. I'd almost call him my first mentor, really. So he's always looking out for me. We work to this day. I bring up plans. He helps me out. That's been huge for me. So that was more of a pocket listing type thing that he brought to me. We built trust. I'll follow through with what I does. He likes what I'm doing. So he gave me the first opportunity on a house with a really good price. Did a little more of a cosmetic rehab, HVAC, floors, paint, plumbing underneath. So nothing too crazy, about 25, 30K into the rehab, but I had already got it at such a good deal. So maybe we'll bring that up later into some investing, but I'm using an exit strategy. Originally, I'm buy and hold forever, but the more and more people I talk to, there's so much equity and I'm not getting a great return. It would work out 30 years down the line like I originally planned, but with just the amount of knowledge that I'm getting from different people, I'm realizing I can utilize that in a different way. Especially I had exit strategies and people praise it all the time. It's cool to actually use it. 1 year later, I have an exit strategy to sell that, flip it, and then reinvest into out of state markets.
Yeah. One thing I think people sometimes misinterpret about the idea of a buy and hold strategy is that it would be different if you were selling these and going and buying a boat or going on a bunch of expensive vacations. But when you talk about taking equity that built up in a house that you bought and you put some work into, you added value and you're in a appreciating market, and you take that equity out and you buy more property that has equal or better, ideally better return potential. Like, I don't personally consider that a huge departure from the idea of buy and hold, because what you're doing is you're taking one thing, exchanging it for something similar that has better potential to get a return on your money. I don't know. I think sometimes people take it a little bit too literally. And also life, this is something I'm learning as I get further down my journey, is that it's not as linear as people think. And especially like I know you mentioned you're 28. When I was 28, I had no kids. I'm 35 now. I just turned 35. I have 3 kids. My whole life changed completely. And I started investing when I was 29. And so my wife and I, when we bought our first, foundational properties of our rental portfolio, we were dual income, no kids. And like all these factors change along with your life. And you can't always anticipate what's going to change and how it's going to change. Maybe you can model stuff out on a spreadsheet, but most people cannot anticipate every single variable. And I think it's okay, if not encouraged, to evolve as your circumstances change. And the other part, just to add there, is like you mentioned in the last 6 months, you've leaned into these communities and you've gotten all these diverse perspectives. You were listening to podcasts before that, but now you're talking to people that are doing podcasts. Now you're going on podcasts. So just getting all these doses of perspective, it opens up your mind and you go from that DIY mentality into now something where you see all these different strategies and different things you could be doing. And I applaud anybody who remains open to expanding and evolving as they get more information and perspective.
No, absolutely. Like you said, it's leaning into these communities, man, especially coming from someone who it's exactly what you said. I had listened to podcasts because I had 2-hour commutes. So I stopped listening to music. I only listened to podcasts and I'd always listen. I got the strategies, but when you actually lean in, especially from someone who's more of quieter and just holding to his own and actually put yourself out there, which is super uncomfortable from the start, but here we are, I'm getting better and better as it goes. You know what I mean? And these people that want to help, it's just super powerful. And then you learn, like you said, I was buy and hold, it was linear. I never thought I would ever really sell a property, to be honest with you. It was buy, hold, all these appreciation plays. But the more I'm learning with all these different strategies, I can cut one piece off that makes sense, but it's like a buy and hold still. You know what I mean? I'm still buying and hold long term. It's just when something makes sense with all the strategies, you can't get stuck in one aspect. Cause I'm in the areas I'm at, I've been more appreciation than cash flow, which I know is the opposite of a lot of people. A lot of people are so stressed on cash flow only. And I remember Coach Carson actually had that video. I think he was a realtor in Houston, if I remember correctly. I can't remember his name. Talked about the 80-20 rule. And that was the first one because I really started with nothing. I put $8,000 on my first house and to roll it into $700,000 of equity 6 years down the line, you know what I mean? Starting from nothing. If I started with just cash flow, maybe that doesn't work, but just a different way. I work so much too that I knew I was going to be able to cover all these expenses. Just a few days ago, I got back from working the hurricanes for 2.5 weeks, 7/16. So I'm working for this. It was going to work. And I think it's just time to balance out the portfolio a little bit, shift a little bit out of the growth mode, 5-6 years, use some of that equity, go out of state where it makes sense, talk to people that are really experienced, skip the steps of making all these mistakes. People are willing to help, man. I feel like in the real estate community, it's not as selfish as other businesses. If you have a car wash person, they probably don't want you building a car wash next to them. Real estate, I'm not really ready to buy this house. You could buy the one next door and I'll give you the realtor, the property manager. Just feels a little more open and everyone's willing to help. So based off learning all that, man, I'm going to just harvest some of that equity that I made. 1 year flip. It's a really good return, but I'm not getting much cash flow. It's more of a liability at that point. I could wait 10 years for equity, but I have 3 other properties that could really have super low interest rates. They make little bit cash flow, pretty solid. That's going to go up. Hold on to those, but really drop one with high equity and no cash flow return and just utilize that one out of state, man. If that really works, it's like a test too, like a trial, but utilizing people that are really experienced and helpful. So that's where we're at. A little bit of a ramble, if any of that.
And this is where it gets fun because when you have a few properties and they're in different, stages and maybe one appreciates more than the other or one performs better. Sometimes some houses don't perform very well and they have a bunch of issues that you don't anticipate. Each one becomes a diversification against the other and you can spread out some of the risk. But the ones that do take off, when you have all that big chunks of equity, it becomes a tool. It becomes a game of chess. What can I do with this? Is the best thing to keep this money here? Is that the safest play or am I leaving a ton on the table? It becomes a game of comparison and you have to ask yourself, especially at age 28, when you have so much potential runway in the rest of your life and all these different new chapters that could be coming your way. It's what is the best play? How can I set myself up best for the future? It's sometimes really hard to see that at the very beginning of your journey when you don't have your first deal yet, or maybe you have one house and you feel like, man, I'm only making $100 a month or $200 a month, whatever it is. You just can't envision that future where you have a few of them and you start to roll it and parlay it into this broader strategy. But I would argue that, when you were 23 and you said it was almost an accidental house hack, it's like you learn so much and you start to see these advantages that you didn't even know existed. And that's what opens your mind to this bigger, expansive possibility. Some people come straight out of the gate and they read a bunch of books and they join communities and they do mentorship. And I think that's actually great. It's a good shortcut. That's not what I did. My parents were investors, but I was similar to you in the sense I didn't do rehabs. I'll clarify that. I'm not a very handy person, but my wife and I really did roll up our sleeves and just take a shot. And we didn't know all the fundamentals of deal analysis. We didn't know how to manage and any of that stuff, and we just figured it out. And we learned more from doing that than we could have from reading 10 Bigger Pockets books. We made some mistakes that we wouldn't have made if we did read 10 Bigger Pockets books. But again, if you weigh it all together and you zoom all the way out and you look at your ability to learn from those mistakes, string together a strategy, and just keep moving and making incremental progress, I don't know, it's hard to discount that experience in the long run. So when you think about 5 years into your journey, starting from this accidental position to now you're talking about making these big moves and having the courage to move your money from your home area, now probably a couple thousand miles away, it's quite an evolution. So I would love for you to talk a little more about now. So you had your Boise house, you already had a little bit of taste of the long distance investing. What are you looking at now? Why are you choosing the areas that you're focusing on, and what has that process been like?
Yeah, so we're taking it a little farther. Boise was far, but it was easy to go out there. It was an hour, 30-minute flight. I enjoyed going out there. I would go out there once a month, hang out. I almost moved there actually till I got the job I wanted here. So next step, we're going a little farther, man. So I'm looking in the Ohio region. I'm looking for a little more cash flow. Obviously, I want more of a linear type market, maybe a 3% year, nothing too crazy, but I'm trying to utilize this equity and actually cash in and get a little bit of cash flow and even out. So I'll have a little more appreciation here in Cali. They're holding their own, but I need to bring in and even out the portfolio a little bit. So that's the idea of selling one here. The process, man, it's a little different, especially because I haven't ventured too much. So I've been out here in California my whole life, and it could be, even compared to Idaho feels really similar to California, right? Just in the neighborhood aspect. When you start looking on the East Coast, like the St. Louis, the Ohio, and the Pittsburgh, it's really foreign looking. And if you haven't been out there, it's like totally different. The house is like 1920s, like an average house when you're looking at these. So it's a lot different. Finding that market could be a little scary. I could understand if you're trying to jump in for the first time. Like when you're looking at these other areas, it's very foreign, but more people live over there. People do it all the time. That was a big part of jumping into these communities. You know what I mean? So like for me, when I look at those, I'm like, there's just no way, but there's people out there killing it. This is what they do. They own 5, 10, 20, 30 units. They buy single family homes. So it's very doable. You just can't be scared. It's getting in. Hardest part is trying to find a team you trust. And I think that's a big part of jumping in communities. If you want to do out of state real estate investing, is having someone there that you can trust in these communities and what people are doing. So the process is I walked in on Ohio region. You actually had someone in Mighty have a pretty good demonstration. I believe his name's Brandon. He's out there in the Ohio region. I've been working with him, just trying to set up a team over there, find people I could trust through the community like it is. And that's been huge. So we're in the process of that, kind of going through, still researching everything, and then just working with Brandon, and then work on getting the house sold here. And then I've committed. So I'm researching every day, just trying to find houses. He's got his own pocket listings type stuff, and then it's selling that house, and then it's ready to jump in over there. So
yeah. So a few things to retrace there, right? One is in these communities or academies or wherever you choose to meet people, you can network in free Facebook groups. You don't have to pay tens of thousands of dollars, but you have to be resourceful in some manner or another. And of course, paid community has a slightly higher bar. So if you're in a paid community, the type of person that's in there might have a little more experience or a little more connections than just perusing the free forums and stuff like that. So there's a number of different ways you can, even from afar, without ever setting foot in the markets you're researching, meet people and get connected to people who do have connections there. And so in your case, like through one of the workshops we had in our community, you came across an investor-friendly agent who has a Rolodex in Ohio, and he's able to plug you immediately in to listings and help you work on your buy box and start sending you stuff that fits what you're looking for. I just think that's a really good example of kind of how to, like, you skipped a few steps and took some good shortcuts, not careless shortcuts, right? It's like you leverage your network and you leverage community, and you got it to a place where you can now, like you said, start analyzing deals every day while you're waiting to sell your property. And as you start to sell your property, you have a general idea of how much money you're going to free up. So you can start to say, okay, what if I, put this money into it, I'm assuming you're probably going to do something like a 1031 exchange, right? Is that your plan?
Yeah, I'm going back and forth whether 1031 or just sell it. I actually don't know the exact law just because my properties are going to be so much more worth more than what's over there on how exactly that's going
Yeah.
to work. So I might just sell it and take the profits, but I have enough write-offs between the 4 properties anyway that it's going to be pretty minimal. So it might be easier to sell it and I'll be able to pretty much get most of the cash anyway. And then I'm not rushing into a 1031. I know 1031 is super powerful, but the one downside is I haven't done one yet, but from my understandings, it's just having that rush. You know what I mean? That 30, 45-day timeline where you're streamlined, where you don't really get to jump into what you want. So I'm still going back and forth on that. I got about 2 months before the tenants are there. Their lease was up on the 1st of December. I just want to work with them. They haven't been bad, so I'm not going to kick them out in the middle of December over the holidays. You know what I mean? I'm not the slumlord, so we're going to work with them, hope for they can find someone. So we're doing a target date of January, which works out fine anyway. Start out the new year, the taxes and everything will roll over to that next year instead of trying to cram everything over to this year. And then, so January 1st-ish, February is our target date for that. And I should have a pretty good idea on whether 1031 or sell, and probably be able to take most of those profits anyway, or pay very minimal.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Remote Real Estate Academy, the community I launched last year where I personally coach investors and empower them to buy rental properties anywhere in the United States. My business partner Nathan and I have a collective 15 years experience with over 20 cash flowing out-of-state rental properties. We provide a step-by-step playbook on how you can build your own portfolio and start accessing the life-changing benefits of real estate investing starting today. Go to remoterealestateacademy.com for more info, or better yet, shoot me an email at aaron@aaronamin.com with subject line RREA, and I'll throw in a special bonus for podcast listeners who join the Academy. Now let's get to the show.
Another good example of this is like the game of chess, right? Like you have a target date that you're going to list your house. You're going to play it. You're going to do the right thing by your tenants, which is, of course, honor the end of their lease. You're not going to do anything rash or try and get them out, which would be probably illegal and also not very nice. And
especially out here in California.
Yeah,
exactly.
So what you're doing, which I want to highlight that I think is really smart, is even though you're not necessarily ready to put in offers right now, you've built a relationship. You're starting to have incoming deal flow that you can analyze so you can understand, hey, in these markets in Ohio that I'm looking at, here's what this amount of money could get me. You start to understand, okay, maybe I don't want something built in 1920. But if I have $100,000 to invest, I can get this type of property. I can get a quadplex or an eightplex. You're just starting to see all the options so that when you get that cash, you'll be in a better position. You won't have to start researching from scratch. You'll have built the relationships. In theory, you'll have continued to network and maybe interview some property managers, contractors, and just line up your whole team so that you're lock and load and ready to submit offers when the capital frees up. That's another just example as we retrace the long distance playbook that I want to highlight is a lot of people, especially when I'm encountering them for the first time and they ask about long distance investing, they assume that they shouldn't jump in until they're ready to buy. You can, of course, jump in if you are ready to buy, but because there's this kind of fear of the unknown and you're conquering this learning curve with long distance investing, I think it can be really smart to ramp up your knowledge and your connections before. Right? You don't have to be ready right that day in order to still get the value out of the research and the network. Because the other thing too is that you might find doing a couple months of research, I don't think this will be the case, but you might find that Ohio isn't exactly where you want to be. And at least you will have done enough research to make an informed decision about yes or no. And so if you do end up deciding to pivot for whatever reason, you can do that from a place of being informed and not just guessing or rushing. And that was a really good point too about the 1031 exchange. For those who, I think most of my listeners probably know what a 1031 is, but it's essentially a mechanism where if you take a rental property and it has a bunch of capital gains, it's appreciated, and you sell it, you can do a 1031 or a like-kind exchange. And if you buy another rental property of similar profile, then whatever gains you have, you can defer the taxes until later. So if your house appreciated $500,000, that would be a pretty hefty tax bill if you just sold it and paid the taxes on it. So a lot of people end up in these 1031 exchanges where they're taking all those gains, which is an amazing thing. And they're saying, hey, I have to go buy at least one or sometimes even multiple properties. And that's, I think, what you were mentioning is if you have all these gains, a house in Ohio could be $150,000. Well, your capital gains alone might be $300,000. So what do I do? You end up having to buy 2 or 3 or 4 houses. There's just some complexities with doing something like that, make it hard. And there's a lot of pressure that you might end up making a decision that's not as sound as you would like if you didn't have that time pressure. So I think those are all the things I wanted to highlight from your story that I think, again, it sounds like you're doing right.
Yeah, and with the 1031, you're just deferring the taxes, right? I am pretty young, so those are going to catch up to me someday. It's not like I'm 50 kind of 1031. I do like it. You 1031 till they die is what some people say, and then those are gone completely. But part of the factor, I figured if I'm able to write off some anyway and really pay minimal tax on kind of the gains as it is based off some other properties and everything, it might be worth it just now and cut that clean because you are deferring it. So who knows 50 years down the line. But where I'm at, it's still, I got a few months to prepare. So we have the target date, which I think is huge, like you said. So it gives me plenty of time to keep looking to Ohio. Brandon's already sent me like 2 listings that are pretty solid, which has gotten me really excited. Obviously, there's still some more detail into it. He does a great job of breaking it down. It's a big part of maybe having an investor-friendly agent rather than just a normal agent that you would go by your personal, because that's more of an emotional thing, right? So they don't understand. Like Brandon sent me 2 properties already. We've had 1 conversation. So it gives me more time to dial in with him and refine my plan a little bit heading into January. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm looking in the more to at least like a 4-plex type thing is what I'm looking at. I'm even open to maybe like a little bit more, but that's jumping into maybe a commercial or DCSR loan. But I have 2 months to plan that, you know what I mean? So go from there. 4-plex most likely, but options are open. See and research the market and see what makes sense. But that's the best part of having some time and planning everything out. To be honest with you, I've been more of like kind of jump into stuff, and I'm like, I think like you said, I didn't analyze all my first properties great. I wasn't doing everything I probably should have. Even the Boise thing, I just went off like some population growth, some feel, blah, blah, blah. Probably didn't analyze it like a pro, but I think maybe that's one benefit. I don't have a lot of fear doing the stuff. Like I'll jump in and I'll get it done and I'm going to figure it out. There's going to be problems and there has been problems, but I don't have the fear of the long distance. Like I'm going to figure it out. Like I didn't see the Boise house until after I bought it. That was strictly going off trust and referrals and family friends and agents that I'd recommended. So I didn't even see the house before I bought it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like crazy. It was pretty turnkey anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. But that could be a big deal for a lot of people. Some people have to see it. And I think sometimes maybe you got to drop a little of that emotion with the long distance real estate investing. But you got to have the guys there that you're going to trust. So.
I would say 2 things, 2 categories I would consider you just described yourself as. You have a bias for action and a problem solver's mentality, right? So as you said, yes, you could be more careful, you could be more methodical, you could be more analytical, all of which I think are good things in a proportionate, moderate doses. But there is also an other side of that where you can get in analysis paralysis. You can overanalyze things to death and talk yourself out of any situation. Because at the end of the day, when you're taking a big chunk of money, you are taking a risk no matter what. And I think some people get up in their head trying to eliminate risk, which is impossible. You can't eliminate it. You can mitigate it with good relationships, good teams, insurance, proper analysis. There's so many things you can do to mitigate your risk, but you can't eliminate it. And if you're going to be the type of person that gets stuck up in your head and spends 2 years just analyzing deals because nothing is perfect, then that's 2 years you could have been in the game, solving problems, optimizing, and just participating in the market, right? And it's not until you get into these deals. I think there's a misconception that buying the house is the end of the journey, but that's actually the beginning. And so I think people sometimes just take a little bit too long, or they hit those resistance points and they give up. And that's where I think something like a coach or a community or a good friend that's an investor, a peer group of some sort, being around people that are doing this stuff all the time, it shows you it's not impossible. And it shows you that, hey, the world's not going to end if you make a mistake. I think that's another thing too. People are just so afraid of making a mistake because they feel like the world's going to end if it happens. And there's just proof after proof out there. That's just not the case. And if you have that problem solver's mentality, you'll be able to get past it, which actually brings me to the last topic I want to hit on with you, which is personal development. Because I know that's something you're big into as well. I know you're someone who works on yourself. You're someone who takes pride in taking care of your body, your mind, and expanding your mind. And so I'm curious, is that always the way you feel like you've been geared? Is that something that's evolved over time as you become more, I don't know, ingrained in adulthood? Like how did that play into this journey as an investor?
So a little bit of both. Over time, I've always had the super competitive type thing. It was more of like I just played multiple sports in high school type thing, always competitive, trying to make myself better, be better. And I say this to a lot of people. Actually, one of the greatest things that ever happened in my life is one of the worst is when I tore my ACL in high school. Had to completely stop all that, figure out where to go from there. Then I started working, and from there it was working normal jobs and everything. And one of the biggest mindset switches I believe that happened for me was being 18, 19, 20, 21, working all these jobs, but I was working adult jobs. Like these guys are 30, 40, 50, 60. I'm seeing 70-year-olds and I'm 18, 19. And it's just that was probably the biggest mindset switch where I really started to work on self-development. I've always been in the gym stuff. That stuff's evolving too, but seeing guys that are 40, 50, 60 that have to go to work 70 days a week, working 7/16s because I have to, missing great guys. These guys are unbelievable. These guys will work 7/16s, work hard, go home to their kids, do everything, but just they have to go to work or they just have all these liabilities and expenses. That was a big thing for me, man, because I missed the college route and everything. I've already been working 10 years. I'm 28. Most people are on their third, maybe fourth year of their full-time job. But back into the self-development thing now, and it's evolved over time to different. I had party phases, don't get me wrong. 23, my first house was a bit of a bachelor pad, friends coming over, blah, blah, blah. Then it starts to switch when I start learning more. And now it's the self-development thing's huge, man. Gets me going every day. I mean, if I can, like on weekends, it's up at 5 to take or up at 4:30 to take my cold plunge in the morning, hit my workouts, come sauna and all that done by 7. Next thing you know, I'm in here and it just puts your mindset in such a big thing. And it doesn't have to be that crazy, just a little workout. And then once your body gets right, your mind gets right. And that just leads to like self-development in your mind after that. And for me, I'm pretty driven and I've had the time, but it's always been solo and kept to myself and not talked to anyone. So my biggest self-development thing that I've been working on in the last 6 to 8 months has been stuff like this, joining communities, making social medias, which I still don't really like posting on, but I'm trying to post more and more and having open conversations with people, trying to help people. And it's been really cool, man. People reach out to me all the time. I have one buddy who talks to me every week now. People that I haven't talked to in years are reaching out. And it's all the self-development thing, put myself out there. And that's where I really needed to grow as a person is, I've said it a few times, is I'd just be to myself and do all this, but just trying to get out there and help and or work on myself. It just makes me a better person. It helps me in my real estate journey. I wouldn't be this far. I would have never sold that Balfour house. I would have never had these different mindsets. I would have still been trying to figure out how to buy my next expensive house in Cali that probably didn't cash flow, but I was just going for appreciation. And just the amount I've learned, the people that I've been able to talk to and experience with, it becomes addicting, man. It's like it's something you can't even explain. I don't know. You just start to feel good. You get better every day and it just gets so much easier. And then you're looking for the next step to get better and you're able to portray that onto other people. And next thing you know, you're able to help someone else a little bit and you're not even really trying. You're just doing normal stuff and advice. And the better you get, the better you're able to just give a little bit to someone else and it's just without even trying. Addicting is the best way and to explain it. You just feel good. Your mind, health, body, it just rolls into every other aspect of life, in my opinion.
When you take care of yourself and you nourish your body, your mind, your soul, it puts you in a better position. You grow. But like you said, there's also this altruistic element where you end up paying it forward. I guarantee you there's going to be some people that listen to this episode, they hear your story, they connect with elements of it or all of it. And it helps them maybe get a seed of inspiration or work past the point of friction in their own lives. And it's just from taking care of yourself and growing and evolving and then sharing. And I think the sharing element is something that's really powerful. And I know it's uncomfortable, especially for someone who might be previously have been pretty introverted or not really put themselves out there. But when you think of it in the sense of, okay, you're reaching other people and you're connecting, you're not out there trying to scam people and be skeezy. You're just out there having conversations and connecting. And there's a big difference between those two. And I think that it can be powerful, and it can also help you grow as a person too when you give stuff away to other people with no real intention of asking for anything in return. I think that's been a really cool thing. I've known you not too long, but long enough to see that you're leaning into this stuff that was previously uncomfortable for you, and also just watching some of that growth that's occurred in a very short amount of time. So I think that's really cool. One other thing, last thing that just I remembered to ask, one of the things that you told me was really impactful for you was like the idea of doing this like planning and strategic quarterly planning and goal setting and stuff, and how you hadn't really done it in like the level of detail that we originally talked about. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, or like just being more intentional about like setting markers and stuff, and how your mindset's changed towards that.
Yeah. So I think, like I said earlier, I've maybe underanalyzed some stuff. I'm usually I'm just going to figure it out. I'm going to do it. Or I have these ideas in my head all the time, but I never really written them down. And you always hear in every book, right? Every podcast, oh, write down your goals, write down this. And let's be honest, and normal people are like, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like I have it in my head, same thing. So you have the planner in your thing, in Mighty. And I actually sat down and utilized this. And I was like, you know what? They have it in the class. It's here. And like, obviously everyone says it. When I sat down and I was just by myself in this office right here for 2 hours, 3 hours, you don't even have to go that long. But now we're in, once I get locked into something, I get in a roll. And it was almost enlightening, you know what I mean? To see it written down and one plan, it just all started. You're reverse engineering that goal starting from square one. So originally I didn't have much of a plan in real estate. Like I knew real estate was a thing. Real estate's one of the best things out there. I need to buy real estate. But when I sat down and did that plan, I was like, so why am I doing it? Another cliche thing. What's your why? But when you kind of just at least put 2-3 things down on why am I investing all this time and money into real estate? It was, for me, financial freedom, right? I want to retire early. Like I really enjoy my own time to myself, work out, doing this, whatever it is. Because I work a lot, I'm forced to work 7/16s here and there, which is fine now. It's just a tool for what I'm doing. But when I was able to write it down and reverse engineer my goal of financial freedom, stuff just starts to become so clear, and you reverse engineer from there. Wrote stuff down, realized what do you need for financial freedom? Eventually you're going to need cash flow, right? So I'm still trying to balance this out, do a 5-10 year plan, still hold on to appreciation. But at some point, I'm going to need cash flow. The appreciation isn't going to let me retire. Like a cool net worth number of $1 million doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? I still got to go to work every day. So when I was able to sit there, that's what it was all said go. Once you have it written down from someone who didn't believe in it or just hears it all the time as a cliche thing, if you could sit down and even write a few goals, man, it's unbelievably powerful. I'm actually going to I had it in the cart today. I'm buying a whole whiteboard to write down goals, calendar thing, a cliche thing in the back that I want to write down and really get better at writing down. Something about writing it down, just your mind clicks a little bit different. You can have all the ideas in my head. I have them all in my head. I know what I want, but something about writing it down and then executing it to cross it off. It helps you focus a little bit, especially for someone that might be a little scattered. You know what I mean? If you can pick your 3 true goals, whether it's a year, 5 years, something about seeing those, it just gives you an easier path to go to. You don't just get scattered and distracted like I easily could.
Sure, man.
So,
no, I'm glad it was a powerful exercise. I think the way I see it, some people are really good at taking action, but they don't necessarily zoom out to think what it's aiming towards. And some people are good at coming up with big ideas and then they never take action. A lot of people fall somewhere in the middle, but it's the intentional exercise of, like you said, getting it out of your head and onto paper, and then finding the connection points between your big vision and what you're trying to do. And then sometimes what can happen is kind of what happened to you, right? Which is that you also start to question your strategy. You say, hey, I've done a great job of investing in real estate and building this core base skills, but the way I have been investing is not fully in service of the long-term goal that I have. So now it's caused you to question some of those initial assumptions. And even though you're really good at taking action and you're fearless in many ways, now you can direct that in a way that is going to be more in service of where you're trying to go long-term. So I think that's the value of doing those big meta exercises and getting stuff out of your head. And really, like you said, even just sitting down for 2 hours and getting in a flow because most people don't even give themselves that much space to think about anything, let alone the big picture of what they want to do with their life.
Yeah, it's that connections, like you said, man. It's the connections in between because everyone has the goals and everything. But when you can write it down and reverse engineer from there, you get all the connections and what makes sense. What was I doing? Yeah, it's all good. I'm investing in real estate. That's what I want to do. But when you get your few goals, even if you do a quarterly planner, you could have your 5-year plan, your 1-year goal, your quarterly goals, just the quarterly goals. You know what I mean? Like I know I'm working on, I have a property that's going to come up in January, February. I know I might have to have reserves for when it sells, like just plans you can build from there. And that's what's nice about having that is this is probably, to be honest with you, the most planned out transactions I'm going to have yet. But that's just part of the growth. You know what I mean? A lot of it was learning as I go and working on some planners, getting goals. And now I'm actually going to be one of the most kind of planned out and ready to go. I know it's selling in January. I know I have this period. I know I'm looking in Ohio. I have 3 months to look in Ohio. So sit down, write a few more goals on a quarterly planner and get that going.
Yeah. And because you're planning it that way, you're also going to be able to make some of the biggest moves you've made to date, right? You're going to go down and take down a quadplex or get it maybe even multiple multifamilies. Like you're going to be able to slingshot a lot of that energy and that equity into something even bigger and better because you took the time to figure out the strategy and then figure out the actions you need to take to get there. So what's great about this is that I'm going to have you on here again in a few months, and we're going to talk about how this all plays out. So I'm personally looking forward to that.
No, I'm excited, man. Like you said, it's focusing that energy and now I'm really focused. So, I can't wait, man. Should be playing out here pretty soon, whether it's 4-8 units. But like I said, I have 2 more months to really lock in and do some more research, talk to Brandon, really get on the same page as him, gives us a month or 2 to work with each other and get to know each other a little better rather than initial conversation and lock in on what he likes, what I like, and build a relationship. And once you get that one and build a personal and I show that I'm able to connect and follow through with what I say and I have a plan, it makes it that much easier to get properties out there. So I'm really excited and look forward to letting you know where it goes from here.
It's been a pleasure having you in the community and I'm really glad to hear you've gotten some value out of it. You made some good connections and I will be following along very closely and helping out however I can. So Kyle, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you, either follow you on socials or maybe even reach out and ask some questions about the episode or your investing journey?
Yeah, of course. I do have a YouTube channel and I have X and Twitter. So those are both Blue Collar Landlord 24. So you can reach out to me, either one on those is probably the best way. Instagram is what I tend to started using the most. It's a little easier for me just to post a story here and there rather than hop on a YouTube channel. But anyone that wants to talk, man, or anyone that's scared or anyone that just wants a conversation, coming from the guy who didn't want to talk to anyone or reach out and feel like you're bothering someone. That's not how it is. Trust me, man. You got to reach out to me and start, and I'll get us started, and you'll be talking to people before you know it. I promise you.
There it is, man. We'll leave it at that. And I will drop all of your social handles and your YouTube channel in the show notes so people can find you. And thanks again, man, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you can take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.